changed the rules, and Yale adopted the same legacy quotas as Princeton and Harvard. George W. had 3 younger brothers and a sister, all of whom had precisely the same legacy credentials that he did. None were admitted to Yale because Kingman Brewster had changed the rules. Kingman Brewster was not popular with the Bush family. Bush did no better at Yale than he did at Andover, returned to Texas, and spent the next 5 years in the wilderness. His father arranged for him to be commissioned in the Texas Air National Guard, which deferred him from service in Vietnam, and his career in the Guard has become a matter of controversy. It was during these 5 years that Bush drank heavily and used prohibited substances. He was admitted to Harvard Business School in September of 1973, and is one of the few graduates of Harvard Business School, if not the only one, not to have a job offer when he graduated. Bush had 53 interviews with Fortune 500 companies, but did not receive one job offer. One of Bush's classmates told me they all considered him to be dynamically ignorant. With no job offer, Bush returned to Texas, and like his father, went into the oil business, buying leases on property, hoping to strike oil. In 1977, he married Laura Welsh, and the following year ran for Congress as the Republican nominee to succeed the retiring Democrat George Mahon. Bush lost the election and returned to the oil business, prospered for several years because of family connections, but the downturn in oil prices hit hard. Bush profited from several fortuitous mergers and eventually sold out. It was during that period that Bush became a born-again Christian. In his memoirs, Bush credits Billy Graham with his rediscovery of God, but the fact is the conversion came a year earlier, in Midland, thanks to a lesser-known evangelist named Arthur Blissett, the man who carried the cross around the world. This was also the time at which Bush gave up drinking. The occasion was his 40th birthday celebration at the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs. Bush became hopelessly intoxicated, woke up the next morning with a terrible hangover, and resolved to quit drinking. Laura, his wife, said it was because he got his bill for that evening's celebration. Actually, it was because George recognized that he had a problem. His father was going to run for president, and he didn't want to embarrass his father, so he did stop drinking at that time and remained on the wagon since then. It was 1986, and no longer in the oil business, George and his family moved to Washington to assist in the presidential campaign. George was given an office in campaign headquarters between Lee Atwater, who was managing the campaign, and Roger Ailes, who was handling the publicity and now head of Fox News. And for the next 2 years, George learned how to conduct a presidential campaign from really 2 of the best men in the business. Poppy ran against Michael Dukakis, and George saw firsthand how to run a presidential campaign. When the election was over in 1988, George declined an appointment to work in his father's administration and returned to Texas. He started an informal campaign for governor, and at the same time to organize a syndicate to buy the Texas Rangers. The Rangers baseball team were the former Washington Senators. They were an expansion team that had been formed in 1961, moved to Texas in 1972. They were scarcely pennant contenders. The deal to buy the team came through. Bush stepped back from running for governor, and for the next 4 years was the very public head of the Texas Rangers, though he only owned 2% of the team. Built a new stadium and basked in the glow of really what was an improving franchise. Bush assisted in his father's election campaign in 1992 from a distance. He didn't go to Washington. And when Clinton won that election, George W. set his sights on running for governor of Texas. Jeb, his brothers, at the same time decided to run for governor of Florida. Bush was running against, George W. was running against incumbent Ann Richards, who was heavily favored. In Florida, Jeb was favored to defeat Democratic incumbent Lawton Chiles. But the election turned out to be an upset. George won in Texas, Jeb lost in Florida, and the 1994 election really made George, not Jeb, the successor to their father. Texas, as you know, is the second largest state in the United States after Alaska, and also the second largest in terms of population. But the governor of Texas has no executive authority. Let me say that again. The governor of Texas has no executive authority. That reflects the post-Reconstruction Constitution that came into effect in 1876 that stripped power from the governor. The governor of Texas is essentially a symbolic figure like the Queen of England. Most scholars in state government consider the Texas governorship to be the weakest in the United States. The governor of Texas cannot even issue pardons to persons wrongly convicted, much less direct government agencies. Now, as a symbolic leader of Texas, Bush was widely applauded. He was overwhelmingly reelected in 1998, and he also built a very effective political machine led by Karl Rove and Karen Hughes, and was quietly exploring the possibility of running for president in 2000.